If you disappeared tomorrow, this house wouldn't collapse. My mom spit those words out like venom, standing in the center of my living room, the house I bought with 15 years of work, no cosigner, no help. Just me. My sister Brooke sat, slouched on the couch, dabbing fake tears into a sleeve that probably wasn't even hers. I said I was sorry, she sniffled, her voice carefully cracked like she'd practiced it in the mirror. My dad stared down at the rug like he was studying it for clues. And my brother Kyle? He smirked, like he was enjoying a rerun of a show he already knew the ending to. This wasn't a conversation. It was an ambush. You're being selfish, Mom snapped. You live alone in a 3-bedroom house. Your sister is trying to get clean. She needs a proper facility. She's been to 3, I replied, my voice calm. Too calm. She needs your help, she shot back. You're her sister. Sell the house. Use the money to save her. Isn't that what family does? What family? I asked, looking around the room. This family, she hissed like I was the outsider. The one that raised you. Gave you everything. Everything. You mean the babysitting? The screaming? The years I spent being an adult in a house full of grown children? Kyle leaned back in the chair, arms folded, enjoying the show. Come on, Aaron. Be the hero you always wanted to be. My name is Aaron Mitchell, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because sometimes to find peace, you have to vanish first. That night, I packed a single bag. Passport, birth certificate, a small envelope of savings no one knew about. I wiped my laptop, deactivated every card, rerouted my mail to a P.O. box no one had access to. I took down every photo of me, cleared every trace of myself from that house. And just before I walked out, I placed a single key on the kitchen counter. No note, no warning, no second thoughts. I was 12 when I learned how to write a check. Not mine, of course. It was Mom's. She was too tired, too distracted, too something, so she handed me the checkbook and said, just copy the numbers. You're smart. You'll figure it out. That's how it always was. I figured it out. While my sister Brooke snuck out of the house in crop tops and smeared mascara, I was at the kitchen table balancing utility bills. While she ran off with boys and wrecked her first car, I was folding laundry, scheduling Dad's doctor appointments, cooking dinner after school. They called me responsible. What they meant was useful. By 16, I had a part-time job. By 18, I had 2. They didn't ask where the paychecks went. They just watched groceries fill the fridge, gas appear in the tank, shoes magically replace themselves when Brooke wore mine out. I never said no. I didn't know I was allowed. College? I commuted. Slept 5 hours a night. Still covered part of Brooke's tuition when she failed sophomore year and needed a second chance. She always needed second chances. She collected them like trophies. They said she was just going through something. What was I going through? Didn't matter. No one asked. I got my first real job at 23. Marketing assistant at a mid-tier agency. Terrible hours, low pay. But I worked. Every promotion, earned. Every raise, fought for. I climbed the ladder while watching Brooke get bailed out of credit card debt by my parents, using money I later found out was partly mine. I bought my house at 32, a modest 3-bedroom with good bones in a quiet neighborhood. I had my name on the deed, my own mortgage, and for the first time, a front door that locked behind me without guilt. But I never really got to live in it. Within weeks, Brooke was between places. Mom started calling it Aaron's place like it was a hotel. Dad joked, "You've got the space, why not?" Every time they showed up, it cost me something. Time, money, peace. Every time they left, they took something with them. Groceries, towels, sometimes a bottle of wine I was saving. I became the bank, the backup plan, the cushion they fell on every time they jumped without looking. But here's the thing about cushions. Eventually, they get tired of being stomped on. They stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource, a safety net, the responsible one, the one who'd never say no, because saying no would mean I was cold. Saying no would mean I didn't love them. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's obligation wearing a mask. And the worst part? They didn't even hide it anymore. My house was their solution to every mistake. Car repo? Aaron will cover it. Rent short? She'll help. Rehab number 4? Sell the house. She doesn't need that much space anyway. They didn't want me to live. They wanted me to fund their mistakes. It started with the water bill. Not a huge jump, just enough to make me pause. Then it was the power. Then groceries I hadn't bought. Toiletries I didn't use. Gas missing from my tank, even though I worked remotely. I started running the numbers, not just in my head, but on paper. And they didn't add up. I wasn't living alone anymore. Not really. Brooke had been crashing in my guest room for 3 months. She didn't pay rent, didn't buy food, spent her days scrolling her phone or sleeping until noon, then disappearing for hours and coming back smelling like whiskey and someone else's cologne. Every week there was a new story, a new disaster. My car got skimmed. I lost my job. It was toxic anyway. My car broke down again. I'll pay you back next Friday. Friday never came. One night, I came home early from a meeting. I paused in the hallway when I heard my mom's voice, low and sharp, through Brooke's cracked bedroom door. She'll fold. She always does. A silence. Then Kyle's voice laughing. She's predictable. One guilt trip and boom, she's signing checks. They didn't know I was home. They didn't know I was listening. They were counting on me folding. Again, it wasn't even about Brooke anymore. It was all of them, circling like vultures around whatever stability I'd built. They weren't worried about my house. They saw it as a resource, a vault with my name on it. And they weren't guessing. They'd done this before. Memories started clicking into place. That emergency call in 2019 when Kyle said his apartment flooded. Later I found out he moved in with a girlfriend that same week. The missing insurance check my mom swore never came. I found the deposit receipt in her glove box when I borrowed her car. They had a rhythm, a system. Build the crisis, trigger my guilt, get the money. I wasn't a person. I was a strategy. And every time I said yes, I trained them to expect it again. They didn't even need to ask nicely anymore. Just mention the word family and watch me cave. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into that room and throw their lies in their faces. I just stood in the hallway, my hand on the wall, studying myself. And I made a decision. Not a loud one. Not the kind you announce with slamming doors and ultimatums. A quiet decision, like a tide shifting under the surface. This time I won't fold. This time I'll disappear. They thought I was sulking. They thought I'd cave like always, that I just needed a few days of silent treatment before I'd come crawling back with a check in hand and guilt in my eyes. But while they whispered and plotted, I was planning my escape. I started with research, the boring kind most people scroll past. Property law, asset protection, identity shielding. I read until 3 a.m. for nights on end, cross-checking everything. I wasn't just leaving. I was severing. Next, I called my HR rep at work and gave my notice, quietly, strategically. I had 6 weeks of vacation banked, and I used every hour. To them, it looked like I was still employed. But I was already out. Then came the house. I didn't sell it. That would have tipped them off. I moved it into a private trust. On paper, I no longer owned anything. They couldn't touch what they couldn't find. I rerouted my paychecks, closed shared accounts, opened new ones under a business entity. Every subscription, every piece of mail, gone redirected. Even my driver's license, changed to a P.O. box in a state I didn't live in. I encrypted everything, backed up my data, scrubbed my devices, set up dual authentication on accounts they didn't even know existed. By day I smiled, played the part, let Brooke steal my shampoo, let Kyle borrow my car, let Mom lecture me about selfishness while eating the lunch I made. I made them feel safe, comfortable, like they'd won. I left little things behind. A misplaced journal, a half-finished to-do list on the fridge, a few bills paid in advance. But the big things? Gone. Shifted. Locked down. They didn't notice, because they were too busy planning how to divide my life between themselves. Once she caves, we can sell the house. She won't need all that retirement money. We raised her. She owes us. They said those things. Out loud. In front of me. And I just kept smiling. The night I left, the air smelled like rain, that kind of fresh, almost electric quiet before a storm. I carried one suitcase, left the closet half full, texted Brooke, "Gone for the weekend, don't trash the place." I walked out the front door and didn't look back. No tears, no drama, just one item left behind, a single house key placed on the kitchen counter like a peace offering. But it wasn't. That key didn't unlock a door. It unlocked their downfall. It took them 2 days to notice I was gone. On day 3, Brooke tried to throw a party in my house. She walked in like she owned it, probably assumed she'd have weeks before I came crawling back. But the Wi-Fi was shut off. The power? Disconnected. The fridge? Empty. The closets? Hollow. She called Mom. Mom called Kyle. Kyle drove over, used his spare key. It didn't work. The locks had been changed. Not illegally. Not in secret. Legally by the trust that now owned the home. A trust with no forwarding address. A trust with one clause. No family access. No shared liability. No right to contest. They tried everything. Mom called the city. Claimed I was missing. They were told I'd filed an official relocation notice. Brooke contacted my old HR rep, learned I'd quit a month earlier. She screamed into the phone, demanded to know where I'd gone. She got a polite response and nothing else. Kyle, ever the fixer, called a friend at the bank, tried to peek into my accounts. They were empty, closed, legally dissolved and migrated. Even my emergency fund, the one Mom used to borrow from, was gone. Then the letters arrived, each one sent by certified mail, each one personalized, each one the truth. To Mom, a breakdown of every expense I'd covered for 20 years. The dental bills, the late car payments, the rehab deposits, the rent I paid without credit. To Kyle, screenshots of his texts asking for money, pretending they were emergencies, while vacationing in Cabo. To Brooke, a list of missed job interviews, fake excuses, the 3 iPads she claimed were stolen, but actually sold. Also enclosed, a voided check from the college fund they guilted me into contributing to, rerouted back to my trust before I left. I didn't threaten them. I didn't scream or accuse. I documented. And when people read facts on paper, their own handwriting, their own lies, they stop arguing. They start unraveling. I heard from an old coworker that Kyle lost a contract after his client got wind of the financial stunt he tried to pull. Mom stopped showing up to church for a while. Too many questions. Brooke moved in with some guy across town. Word was she tried telling people I abandoned the family. Funny how that doesn't land when your own sister leaves you an itemized receipt. I never called, never showed up to explain. They were left with silence, the one thing none of them knew how to survive in. No one to yell at, no one to guilt trip, no one to twist with pity and debt. There was no explosion, no fire, no final showdown, just the slow, humiliating realization that I was gone, and they were never going to find the old version of me again. My revenge wasn't loud. It was clean, precise, irreversible. Families fall apart 2 ways. Suddenly like a glass dropped on tile, or slowly like wood rotting from the inside. Mine did both. Once the money stopped, the rot surfaced fast. Without me around, they had no buffer, no fixer, no plan B. The first cracks came in group texts, screenshots sent to me anonymously by an old cousin who stayed neutral. Brooke accused Kyle of stealing from Mom. Kyle fired back that Brooke was a manipulative addict. Mom replied with a one-liner that said everything. Your sister left because she was tired of carrying us. That's when the real fight started. Kyle drove to Mom's house and pounded on the door. She wouldn't let him in. 2 days later, Mom showed up at Brooke's apartment, half drunk and crying. Brooke locked her out. By the end of the week, Kyle had blocked both of them. I didn't respond to any of it. Didn't need to. Because the house, my house, wasn't just brick and drywall. It was the engine they all leaned on, the unspoken safety net they built their chaos around. And now it was gone. Brooke's addiction, the one I spent years dragging her out of, came roaring back. She tried to sell her laptop, the one I'd bought her during her clean streak. Pawned it for a weekend binge and got arrested after a bar fight. Kyle tried to launch a business, couldn't get a loan with the debt in his name. Tried to spin the story to investors that his sister stole from him. They checked the records. They found nothing. He went silent after that. Mom? She unraveled the slowest. Started calling old friends. One she hadn't spoken to in years. Said she was betrayed by me. That I'd been ungrateful. But no one really listened. Because even the best storytellers sound hollow when their audience remembers the truth. Eventually, she stopped talking to people altogether. Dad didn't say a word through any of it. He never did. The man who watched me raise his children while he drank in the garage just kept sipping his whiskey and pretending none of it was happening. I watched it all quietly from another state, another life. No contact, no reaction, just enough distance to finally breathe. My phone stayed on Do Not Disturb. My inbox was filtered. Every voicemail saved, not to revisit, but to remember. Not one message said they missed me. Not one message said they were sorry. Just variations of, come home. Fix this. We need you. That was the truth. They finally noticed I was gone. But not because they missed me. Because they needed me. In the beginning, my silence felt like punishment. I mistook the stillness for loneliness. Mistook the freedom for guilt. But grief is sneaky like that. It makes you mourn people who were never really there for you. The first 6 months in the new city were quiet. I rented a small apartment with southern light that warmed the floors in the morning. Took walks without needing to tell anyone where I was. Bought groceries for one. Cleaned up after just myself. It was surreal and sacred. I got a job I never would have applied for before. Senior operations manager at a company where no one knew my last name. And for the first time, my life wasn't just survival. It was mine. Therapy came later, once the adrenaline wore off, and the silence grew a little too loud. At first, I told my therapist I was fine. She smiled, nodded, and said, "That's usually where the story starts." She helped me untangle years of buried resentment, dressed up as duty. Helped me say out loud that being needed wasn't the same as being loved. That I wasn't cruel for leaving. I was kind to myself for the first time. Eventually, I started writing again. Not for them. Not to explain. But to remember. Essays. Short stories. Anonymous blog posts about daughters who disappear and women who rebuild. And slowly the comments came. This sounds like my family. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for putting it into words. I wasn't alone anymore, and neither were they. I met other women who had walked away from the same fire I had, and stopped apologizing for not staying to burn. We built something small but steady, a digital circle, a private group, a space for daughters who carried too much for too long. We didn't talk about revenge. We talked about peace. One day, someone messaged me directly. She was 24, working 3 jobs, and still being told she was selfish for wanting her own apartment. She wrote, "How do you stop being their daughter?" I replied with what I'd finally learned. You don't stop loving them. You stop letting them write your story. It took me a long time to stop checking my inbox for their names. Even longer to stop imagining fake reunions where they'd show up crying, apologizing, asking for a second chance. But that moment never came. And eventually I stopped needing it to. Because my healing wasn't waiting for them to change. It was born the day I changed. I kept my new address private. Stopped explaining where I'd gone. Stopped answering messages that began with guilt. I didn't owe them a return ticket just because I'd once lived in their house. Now, when people ask about my family, I say this. I was raised by people I had to unraise myself from. And I say it without shame. Because I'm not their daughter anymore. I'm something they never planned for. Free. You can love people and still leave them behind. 1 year later, I walked past my old house. It was quiet, too quiet for a Saturday morning. The shutters were faded now, and the for sale sign out front tilted slightly in the winter wind. No balloons. No welcome mat. No one inside. It looked like a place that had been abandoned, then filled with chaos and then abandoned again. I paused across the street, coffee in hand, coat pulled tight against the cold. A part of me had expected this moment to hit like a wave, regret maybe, sadness, but all I felt was calm, like I was watching someone else's story, like I was just a tourist in the town where my past used to live. A year ago, this house was everything, the center of every fight, every guilt trip, every sacrifice I was told to make for family. Now, it was just a shell, a listing with no offers, a property stripped of its anchor, a home that never really was one, at least not for me. I heard later from a former neighbor that they all moved out, separately. Kyle first, after the fight with Mom turned physical. Brooke next, in the middle of the night, leaving behind a mattress and 3 eviction notices. Mom tried to stay, but without support, the mortgage drowned her. She stopped answering the door. Eventually, she stopped answering anything. They never rebuilt. They never apologized. They never came looking. And that's the part one thought would hurt, but didn't. Because what they lost wasn't just me. They lost the only person who kept them whole. There are pictures of me in that house in photo albums shoved somewhere under the stairs, probably. Pictures of birthday cakes I paid for, presents I wrapped, faces I smiled at while breaking inside. But memories are just echoes if no one else wants to keep them alive. And I had already buried mine. I stood there for a while longer. Let the wind carry away the silence. And then I turned, walked back to my car, and drove home to the city where no one calls me selfish for being at peace. Where no one asks me to set myself on fire just to keep them warm. I'm not angry anymore. I don't need them to understand. I don't need closure from their mouths. Because I built my own. It looks like morning light on clean floors. Like laughter that isn't forced. Like loving myself without apology. When I left that night, 1 year ago, I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a scene. I left one thing. A single key. They held it like a symbol of victory. They thought it meant I was coming back. They didn't realize it was the last piece of me they'd ever see. I didn't just leave the house. I left the version of me who believed love had to hurt. I left the girl who gave and gave, hoping it would one day be enough. I left the ghost they fed on. They thought I was their foundation. But when I left, they learned I was the only thing holding it all together.